I should be focusing on. And then sometimes it just feels like when I'm going through it, like the first time I read it, I'm barely comprehending it, and then I have to go back to the questions and then back. So
Yeah,
trying to
fair enough.
figure out how
Okay.
to avoid doing that.
Well, this is a pretty good one to start on for those two things then. This isn't
Okay,
science
great.
nor comparative. However, it's about literature, it's about Dostoevsky, and is really complex. So for the comparative ones, and I suppose we don't have time to go through multiple different reading comprehension things today. However, we can have some general stuff for it.
Yeah.
Comparative passages, everything else comes secondary to what the overlap between the two passages are. If you can have a 100% clear idea of where specifically they overlap, you've done the majority of the work already. So the way you should be kind of thinking about them when going through them, first of all, is what specifically is the middle of that Venn diagram? Where is the overlap? Everything else matters a lot less. Still keep it in mind, obviously. Don't like necessarily forget about it. However,
Yeah.
wherever the middle ground is what the majority of the questions are going to focus on. So that comes first. Second of all, then you start thinking, how do they think about this differently? Do they agree on the topic? Is one a continuation of the other, which is a very common structure? Well, they'll bring in an idea and then they'll extend it outward. And then after you kind of thought about their differing attitudes towards it, the final thing is going to be what is their tone? Is one of them writing it like an academic article? Is one of them kind of just like, here's this cool new thing that I found out about this? But just based off of those, realistically, you can answer most questions. If you think about the reading comprehension section, in relation to like logical reasoning. When you read a logical reasoning question about how like fiber affects pancreatic cancer or something like that, you don't
Yeah.
really care about fiber or pancreatic cancer. You care about the logical relationship between them.
Right.
Reading comprehension is that just with a lot harder, it's a lot harder to abstract away from it because you're reading all of it
Yeah.
about it. But what's going on doesn't really matter. The relationship for comparative passages is all that matters.
Okay.
Similarly, for science passages, where people typically get stuck for those, and this becomes much, much more of an issue at like the higher level you get to. No matter what, you're going to run into something that you have no idea what is happening with it. It is an
Yeah.
ability, and it's going to happen whenever you like on your actual test. It for some reason always does where you run into something. My one, I came into like a on my test, there was some philosophy passage that I had no idea what was going on. But
Yeah.
the most important thing for those sections is keep in mind you aren't supposed to understand it. You don't have to care what's actually going on with it. For the science ones, remember vaguely where things are. Try to see what's going on, understand it. The kind of thing to do if you read across something that you genuinely just have no idea what it means, read that specific sentence twice and then keep moving on. There's no point in spending like even like 20 seconds trying to understand a sentence when you think about it, most sections aren't going to have more than 6 questions to maximum like 8 questions. So the odds are the thing you didn't understand, they're not going to be able to test you on because
Yeah.
it's simply not enough room. And by reading it over twice, it kind of clicks into your memory like, okay, if this is here, then I can go back and spend that time. With that all being said, so this passage is really confusing. There's a lot going on in it. And the main point is that there's a couple different viewpoints with it. So with this here, think about we're told about three kind of viewpoints. Dostoevsky's, uh, a second one which doesn't actually have a name, but I'm like they're idealists, and then a third radical view, the realists. That's not overly important. The important thing is when you're reading, especially these humanities ones with differing viewpoints, they get a lot easier if you just keep in your mind what their viewpoints are. You don't need specifics about it. Take a little paragraph summary of, okay, this is where we describe this one person's view, this is another, this is another. By just having their key points, you break down an entire, like, all of this passage into what is realistically like a couple short sentences that you can answer the passage based off. But anyways, I'll shut up. I'll let you read through. Let me know when you're
Okay.
this, and I'll click on to the next page.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, you can go to the next one.
Okay, so for this passage here, it's pretty clear. Each paragraph has a clear purpose. So what do you think the purpose of the first paragraph here is? What's going on in it?
To introduce the three different positions and where Dostoevsky sits.
Yeah, and what are the three different positions?
One position is that art stands high above the present and the everyday, and then the realist or the radicalist thinks that everything should be that art only exists in concrete reality, um, and that things should be useful. And then Dostoevsky kind of he stretches on the radical people.
And which side does Dostoevsky fall more on? What is Dostoevsky?
The radical
Yeah,
folks.
yeah. Dostoevsky's a realist who just takes a slightly extended approach. So we have three camps who we'll call the first one idealists for the sake of this passage. That's what they're called in the real world. The
Yeah,
realists and then Dostoevsky. None of the ideas in this passage are particularly difficult. They're just stretched in such a way across the passage that if you didn't understand any specific part of it, then it gets very difficult. So, what are Dostoevsky's main points? What does Dostoevsky think of the realist's ideas? What are his critiques of it?
uh, first, he says that like the reality you should push past reality um in the first or the second paragraph.
Mhm.
Um and yeah, like the sentence within perceptible reality exists in another sphere than fantastic. So different than what's actually in real life. Then he talks about how literary works doesn't necessarily need to have a utilitarian view. And then he defines his own understanding of art, and it doesn't have to just serve a purpose. And then he says, how can we possibly know what is useful?
Yeah, so we have Dostoevsky's three main points here. We know the idealists have a very, very short role to play here. We have literally one sentence about them, and
Yeah.
then we know what the realists are about. So, with that, we can get into the questions. Main point of the passage questions, how do you generally feel about them? Do you usually are you usually on the ball for these, or how do you feel?
I feel like sometimes I get tripped up on these. Like,
There's kind of a
usually it
standard
works out,
process.
but then sometimes I'm like, oh, yeah,
Mhm. First of all, the obvious thing, make sure it's true. Make sure it applies to what's going on in the passage. It'll never go against the passage. The second main thing is it has to be general enough. And that's kind of the easier, like secondary way that the harder answers can be differentiated. Whichever one is more general is usually going to be the right answer, especially if something's leaving something out. If you notice the
gotcha.
important parts of a passage, those definitely have to be in it. So even when between two answers, a lot of times on the harder ones, both of them are going to have the main ideas of it. So then your next step, which one covers more of the passage? With both of those things being true, you've usually found the right answer. So what do you think about answer choice A here?
Okay. Um, like I would keep that in for a first pass.
What is the like when going about it, how do you usually go through answer choices?
Um, I look at them like quickly, all of them, and try to see which ones I can like immediately take out, and then I
Yeah.
like go through the last choices
Yeah, that's
afterwards.
perfect. That's how I'd recommend it as well. And then when do you do like blind review, anything like that kind of stuff?
Yes, although I really have a bad habit with blind review that I look at the little thing that tells me whether or not I got it wrong before I do it.
I
So,
often
yeah,
did that as
yeah,
it's so tempting. But there's just
yeah,
realistically there's more to be learned from the wrong answers than the right answer. So
yeah.
what do you think you could find if you were to have to critique A? What could be wrong with it?
Um, Maybe not that he like developed a new apparatus for or developed the theoretical apparatus for a new direction. I feel like he was just critiquing them, maybe.
And do we know if this new direction that implies that it was followed, that something came about it? Do we actually know what happened after Dostoevsky talked about this?
No.
No. Yeah. We're never told
Yeah.
if anyone else followed Dostoevsky's lead, so then we can move on. The
Okay.
hardest answer choices often can are just knocked out by, or at least quickly knocked out. If we don't know something, we're never going to be asked to, even the most abstract infer questions will still base themselves in some line in the passage. So we,
Yeah.
what about B?
Gotcha. Um, no,
Why not?
because the idea that literature should be removed from reality, I don't really know if that's what he thought, and also that wouldn't be opposing the idealists
What,
necessarily.
yep, what does Dostoevsky think about reality?
Um, what does he think? That it should be
What camp does Dostoevsky fall into?
the realists or the
Yeah.
radicalists. So
And what do,
yes,
yeah. So then by keeping in mind that Dostoevsky is a realist, it'll make a lot of these answer choices easier because even though
yeah,
Dostoevsky thinks we should be a little bit removed from reality, it's still our grounding factor. What about
gotcha. Right? Like no, that's maybe not broad enough.
Exactly. This ignores second and third paragraphs. Dostoevsky has
Yeah.
a ton of criticisms, not just one. What about D?
Mm, no, I don't think so. No.
What are you thinking about for it?
Um, like yes, he maybe was critical, and I don't know if he championed the freedom of the artist.
That's kind of a vague wording for anything. That's a
Yeah,
little bit like almost meaningless. The next part of it here, against the narrow constraints imposed by the radical Russians, critics concerned with depiction of reality. What might be wrong with
but
that?
if he is that,
Hmm.
um,
Is it general enough? Like, are we actually covering enough with this answer choice, do you think?
I don't. I would see in this situation. I would usually go to the next one and then figure it out from there.
I would too
Um,
if I was actually doing the test. Yeah, definitely
yes,
going through it. But what
but
do
this is definitely good exercise. Um,
you
in his critical writing system, I feel like yeah, it wasn't all about their depiction of reality.
definitely.
That's too
Yeah.
narrow. Okay.
Our main thing that we're going for here is not just Dostoevsky doesn't like the depiction of reality. It's Dostoevsky doesn't like the depiction of reality, the way that they look at art serving a particular purpose, and the use of.
Yeah,
So this, even more so
also
than
too
C,
narrow.
where it just misses second and third paragraphs, this only focuses on paragraph two. So then we get to E. What do you think about E?
Well, by process of elimination, perhaps it's correct. Um, yes, but I mean, it lays out the three things and
Mhm.
says that that's how he's different. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it even does it in order, which is always nice.
yeah.
So moving on to this next here, what paragraph would we look to find out what Dostoevsky thinks of as artistic?
Was that the third paragraph? No,
Yep.
fourth. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. We have
Um,
the fourth paragraph we have for usefulness, but what would make
yeah.
something artistic in Dostoevsky's view?
Um, he has his definition. He possesses a talent to express his thoughts and characters and images so that when the reader has finished the novel, he has fully understand the author's thought. Artistry is quite simply the ability to write well.
Yeah, so we're just looking for something written well and understandable. What do you think about it?
Maybe.
Okay, why?
Um, it illustrates the brutal facts of illness, like it
Do we know
is maybe
anything about
clear.
do we know if that means it's clear?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah. No. They usually won't ask us to go that far to like assume anything about this.
Yeah,
Know if the readers will actually understand the author's opinions. Maybe they illustrate the bureau facts of illnesses, but did it terribly. Who knows?
gotcha. Yeah.
What about B?
And I'll understand. I don't think so.
Why?
Uh, suitable characters and events. I feel like that is not really what he's saying by
What are
the
we
ability to
looking,
write
what
well.
qualities are we looking for ability to write well? Like, what does that actually mean?
For the person to have understood the author's thoughts.
Hmm. What kind of
Okay.
word choice would you be looking for in an answer to find that?
Um,
Because we're looking for express his thoughts, yeah,
clear.
but express his thoughts through characters and images.
Oh, okay, this is true.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the right answer. However,
But
when we're going through, the difference that we see between A and B is that this answer choice seems to be hinting at they're doing it well at the very least. Given substance
yeah,
and suitable, this at least one is one definitely I would keep around for a first pass.
okay,
Or we see
gotcha.
it does seem like they're indicating that it's being done well. They're writing well, it's suitable. So
Gotcha.
let's see.
Okay. Um, in which the author attempted to use allegory to communicate. I feel like it's not giving that it's very clear.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like exactly giving accolades to that. What about D?
Um, autobiography, in which the author still again doesn't talk about it being clear.
Mhm. We have no idea. What about E?
That also doesn't really relate.
Yeah. So then we have
So
only
then,
one where they even talk about if it was done well or not done too well. All right, moving on to here. Okay, so we'll do this question first, actually. The description of a work of literature as useful refers to what? Where do we talk about when something is useful?
at the last paragraph.
That's when we
Um,
talk about the importance of usefulness. Yeah.
oh, so then maybe the second to last.
How often do you use
Um,
the search kind of thing?
how often?
Yeah.
Honestly, sometimes.
It's kind of
Like
helpful
when
in
I'm,
questions where you're
especially
looking
one of
for.
like what is in passage B but not in passage A
That's fair enough.
instances.
But for this, it would be extremely helpful as we're looking for like an exact definition. We have
Yeah,
usefulness here. Can you actually find it just like what useful means from this paragraph though?
no.
No, not really. But then if we get up to
Okay, then
what does useful refer to here? What does it
in
mean?
the first paragraph,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
it contributed to the creation of a new society.
yeah. So let's see which of the answer choices make most sense for that. What do you think about A?
I don't think so.
Hmm. Yep. That one we don't really need to explain. What about B?
Um, not no,
Why not?
because it's not about creating a new society. It's just about the
Yeah.
author's ideas.
This is part of
But
Dostoevsky's
good for
character.
artistry.
Right?
Artistry.
Yeah. What about C?
Um, yes.
It sounds similar. It's not exactly perfect. However, if we're looking for contributing to a creation of society, we probably have to change that society. So it makes
Yeah.
sense. What about D?
So leave it for now. Um, exploding the boundaries of the tangible world. Um, I don't think so.
No. Yeah. This
Mm,
is again Dostoevsky's view, and this just sounds pretty dramatic.
yeah,
What about E?
same thing. It's not, or like in reality.
This one's not referred to by anyone. So even by
Yeah.
process of elimination, we only get down to one that's talked about. And yeah, same thing there. So here. For these kinds of questions here, it will be in order, it'll be pretty exact. If you feel uncomfortable with an answer choice, even just intuition wise, knock it out. When you get into like a big thing of people improving from the 150s to 160s is trying to eliminate any kind of outside assumptions that you bring into the LSAT, making sure you're just using what's on the page. When you get to the 170s and to the high 170s, it start getting to be allowed to bring in your intuition a lot more. You've seen enough questions now that your intuition is probably going to be right more often than not, and you do have to trust that in order to get quick enough to make sure that you can really get through and knock out questions on the questions where your intuition isn't telling you anything. So
Yeah.
on this question, but the less so, but across the board, start to trust your intuition. If something feels weird, you're probably correct. And then it's like in the untimed practice where you can fully just be like, okay, why am I feeling weird about that? But what do you think about A?
No, because they're not all elaborated in detail. Like the idealists only have one sentence.
Yeah. What about B?
Um, the third is not necessarily differentiated from the first two, but just what is it, the second one? That's the realists.
Yeah. What about C?
Um, I'd say that I would keep in there.
All right. What about D? There are two problems with this one. What do you think?
Um, doesn't or three positions are in the short assumed to be superior. I don't know if it's talked about superior or just like that's what Dostoevsky thought. And then also maybe not necessarily to the first two, but just to the second one.
Like author's opinion wise throughout this passage, we don't really have too much. It seems like the author,
Yeah.
if anything, is probably on Dostoevsky's side. But
Yeah.
usually, if we're looking for opinion, we're looking for where the author said something that the author didn't have to. Something like where they like referred to someone and then went, and they were right on the fact that, or just anywhere where they use language they didn't have to. There's none of that here, so it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like they're on a side. However, if we had to choose one, the author is definitely on Dostoevsky's side. We're writing three paragraphs about
That's true.
Dostoevsky's critique without anything further. So, but we can knock it out because we're not showing it superior. And what about E?
I don't think it's also neither is it shown to be inferior
Mhm. So
to
we
them
get
C.
down to just this here. And then we'll move on to 27 so we can start getting into logical reasoning questions.
Right.
But all
Um,
right. So for this, we're just looking essentially for something that goes along with one of Dostoevsky's criticisms that kind of weakens one or helps it a bit.
okay.
So what do you think about A?
I would leave that in for the moment. I feel like he's talking about um like in the second paragraph, like it
What's
doesn't have to
Dostoevsky's criticism in regards to reality?
um like the last sentence, the fantastic must be so intimately bound up with the real that one almost believes in it. Like you can combine the fantastic and reality,
So what do you think about it?
maybe.
Would Dostoevsky
Oh,
further?
okay. So maybe you're not drawing a sharper distinction.
Yeah, Dostoevsky,
Got
this would
it.
probably have annoyed him a little bit.
Yeah.
What about Pete?
But clarity of purpose ahead of form. Honestly, I don't know.
That's fair enough. What does
Like he
Dostoevsky
said,
think about formal aspects?
artistry is good when you are clear. I don't remember what he said about formal aspects though.
That's fair enough. What paragraph do you think we would be looking for this?
In the artistic paragraph.
Yeah. So go ahead, skim through. What do you think Dostoevsky would think of this? Or what do we know about formal aspects?
Ah, utilitarian claim that the formal aspects of a work were of secondary importance so long as its goal was good. Struck Dostoevsky as a contradiction.
So would Dostoevsky prefer that we put clarity or anything else ahead of formal aspects? Or what was Dostoevsky?
Not necessarily because he thinks it's a contradiction to
Mhm.
make
We
it of
don't
secondary
necessarily know
importance.
about Dostoevsky, in fact, doesn't make that distinction between clarity and formal aspects.
Yeah.
He's essentially saying they're the same thing. What about C?
Acknowledge the importance of eliminating. Sure. Like in the second paragraph,
Dostoevsky, well, what does
acknowledge
Dostoevsky think about reality?
that it is flexible.
He thinks it's flexible, yes. Specific word, keep word choice specifically in mind here.
Of
What
eliminating elements.
hmm What do you think about that?
Okay, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's still including the reality, but it's just shaped by you and who experiences it.
Yes, definitely with that. Because if we think about it, at Dostoevsky's core that we're being told, Dostoevsky is a realist. The reality was
Yeah.
never its crucial source. It should just be shaped by the person. But eliminating elements of reality from literary works, that would have Dostoevsky raising from the dead to be upset at us.
Right.
So, what do you think about D?
I think no,
Why not?
because he doesn't seem to care, or he's like questioning artistic merit.
What is this question about artistic merit?
What does it mean to say that a work is artistic? Or only? Maybe not.
And what's the difference between how the critics view this whole idea of artistic merit versus Dostoevsky? What are
The
the
radical critics. Oh, he says a literary work must stand or fall on its artistic merit, he explained.
Mhm.
Um,
So do you think if the
so I guess he does care about that.
he definitely cares about it. Yeah. And then if we view what the radical critics are saying here, art must serve a particular political purpose. Well, they don't simply realize maybe if something is well written, then it has artistic merit. So by softening their stance on that and saying, okay, well, maybe it doesn't need a political purpose, there's a chance Dostoevsky might kind of also weaken his radical opposition towards that.
Gotcha.
And what do you think about E?
Explain more fully that their demand that reality be depicted as it is. I feel like he hasn't takes issue with the idea of it being as it is, though.
Mhm.
So maybe explaining more fully wouldn't help.
Yeah, Dostoevsky isn't saying he doesn't understand what they mean by saying meaningless. He understood what they meant. He just thinks that there's no such thing as reality as it is.
Right.
And with that being said, we'll start moving into logical reasoning here. But for improving at reading comprehension, that's where I struggle
Yeah.
a bunch more than logical reasoning as well. My logical reasoning was pretty good. My reading comprehension, it took a long time to get like down to consistently getting them fully correct. The biggest
Yeah.
part is really just doing a lot of practice on them and recognizing where your faults are for them. Seven Sage is awesome for that because of all of the analytics for it. However, I
Yeah.
have done every single five-star difficulty passage on Seven Sage because reading comprehension improves way more with practice than with any specific small things. It doesn't, and even outside of the LSAT, just doing a lot of reading in your day-to-day life helps a ton, time-wise, obviously. However, with seeing the kinds of inferences that they're making. If science passages are what's most difficult for you overall, or what you're typically getting the most wrong on, most people falter on that with not being able to remember where the specific details are or not understanding specific conclusions that they're drawing. For that, that's more practicable blind review wise, but try to remember where things are when going through it and then test that. Even on the questions where it's like, which of these was talked about or referred to? Which of these do we have enough information to answer? Even if you're 100% certain about what the right answer is and you remember where it is, try to be thinking about where would the answer to the others be. Go through the other paragraph.
Gotcha.
Well, maybe it would be there, maybe it would be there. That's going to be the biggest thing to change for that. But let's get into the logical reasoning. What kinds of questions do you have the most difficulty with for those, do you feel like?
Um, Definitely I did, or like lately I've been practicing a lot with the like parallel reasoning
Hmm.
and parallel, and I feel like that has been getting better. Um, I think also any of the conditional reasoning and like the really logic-y ones,
Hmm.
those I tend to struggle more with. I feel like in Seven Sage in the beginning when it was doing the logic, I kind
Yeah.
of was like, I won't need that. So
Hmm.
that
That's
part
fair
is maybe
enough.
harder. Yeah,
Those also like the must be true realistically for conditional logic, the only questions that you should actually like try writing them out for are going to be sufficient assumption and must be true questions. Everything else, more often than not, and the occasional parallel reasoning question, everything else, you're going to mess yourself up more often than not, first and foremost, because logic is an absolute tool. Anything that you put together with logic, it has to be 100% true. So then the only questions that really works for are sufficient assumption must be true questions. And even then, if you think that you don't have to diagram it, if you feel like you're able to do it in your head, don't diagram it. Diagramming takes so much longer
Yeah.
that just trying your best to do it in your head and practicing that, even untimed first, kind of get better at that, gives you that extra couple seconds. I assume since you're in the 170s that you're getting through all of the questions fairly consistently. So, but having that
Yeah.
couple seconds, especially on some of the harder ones, helps a ton. But we'll do some sufficient assumption kinds of questions here. Okay, so go ahead,
Okay.
read through, and let me know what the conclusion
Probably
is.
John. See, this is one where I would diagram.
This is one where I would also diagram, which is why
Okay.
we're starting with this
I was
one.
like, do I have permission to do that? Okay. Um, okay.
Okay, so if we have, starting from our conclusion, if students don't achieve broad mastery, they aren't being taught using appropriate methods, then we can start our diagram with, oops, wrong button there, simply not having broad mastery to not having the appropriate methods as just like a
Right.
starting point. And then we can get into our evidence. First, if you have appropriate methods and significant effort, then you have broad mastery. I can draw some little arrows there to indicate that. And then for any of these, it's always good to be thinking about what our contrapositive would be here. If we don't have broad mastery, then you're either missing appropriate methods. That should have a B there.
Hmm.
Then you either don't have broad mastery, or then you're missing appropriate methods or significant effort. And then from this, do you see what any flaw that we have here is?
That if
Think about specifically what our conclusion is.
so, the conclusion is that if you don't have broad mastery, then you don't have appropriate learning styles.
Mhm.
But they're mixing up maybe the sufficient and necessary. Like if you have both, then you'll have broad mastery, but it's not necessarily if you don't have broad mastery that you don't have either.
Kind of, yeah. They're concluding that if the broad mastery isn't achieved, well, then those students aren't being taught with methods appropriate to their learning style. But there's two
Yeah.
possibilities if we lack the broad mastery, that one or that one. So then how would
Yeah.
we guarantee that our conclusion is true? What would we
Ah,
need?
I see.
Yeah. What do you think?
Um,
Do we need to
that we
prove
would
it?
need to know that they are not also don't have appropriate, or wait, that they didn't devote significant effort.
Yeah. And a big thing for improving consistency wise, which is really all you need to work on at this point. There's no real like understanding gap between when you're in like the low 170s to high 170s to a perfect score. Realistically, there's nothing that you don't know that anyone else fully does know. It's largely tips and tricks to improve speech.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is just consistency. Consistency, if you pay way, like spending 80% of your time with the stimulus before going into the answer choices, that's how you reach a more consistent kind of level. Because even
Gotcha.
everyone is susceptible to getting messed up by really stupid trap answers. Like,
Yeah.
you'll do a section of like all of the hardest questions. You'll have like one-star difficulty question and that you'll get wrong because it has a trap answer that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
So by spending most of your time, and it is a really good practice method to try to fully guess what the answer is going to be before even going into the answer choices. We know what the answer is going to be here now. We don't know how it's
Yeah.
going to be worded necessarily, but by knowing what the answer choice is, then we get ourselves out of the trap of the whole at the 170 level, you can convince yourself that anything is right if you spend long enough doing it. So by knowing what the answer is going into it, you get yourself out of that whole trap there. So what do you think about A?
Long as secondary students are taught with methods appropriate to their learning styles, they will devote a significant effort. I think yes, because that's saying like if we don't have the appropriate methods, or wait, that's saying if we do have the appropriate effort methods, then they will have the other one. But I don't know, is that necessarily saying that if we don't have it, I'm getting confused with the negation.
That's okay.
Um,
If we go through this, if this is true, what does lack of broad mastery inevitably lead to?
Both.
Yeah, if this is true, then lack of broad mastery has to lead to lack of adequate methods.
Yeah.
So then we get to prove our conclusion here. So sufficient assumption questions, very nice, because if we have the right answer, we don't even have to read through any of the rest of it
Yeah.
whatsoever. And as we only have like 15 minutes left, does this question make sense?
Yes. Yeah. This is definitely something I would like then go through all the different answers anyway
Yeah. They're
and
very,
then trip myself up. So, yeah.
I'm a very large proponent of the wrong answers give you way more than the right answers learning wise. Okay. All right. Another sufficient assumption question. This one's much less diagrammy, but
Okay.
is
Great.
interesting nonetheless. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So, first off, do you already see anything missing here? What do we not have?
We don't have like a principle that's saying that you should pay for damage when you could reasonably expect something to happen.
Yeah, spot on. So now all we need to do is find something like that. So we'll knock out these answer choices for the sake of time.
Okay. One should
What's the
pay for
difference
any
between
damage.
these two here?
One should pay for any damage that one's actions leads other people to cause. I think probably A because I don't necessarily know that it's an only if.
What does the only if indicate there?
That's the only way that somebody should pay for it.
Yeah, it's indicating a necessary condition for us.
Yeah.
It essentially tells us when we shouldn't pay for damages. It doesn't tell us
Yeah.
a scenario in which we should pay for damages, if at all.
Got it.
So then we end up with that. And as you said, we have no principle on if and when to pay for damages. This clears that up. Awesome. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to a couple of flaw questions before we finish up. But let me know if you've
Great.
seen any of these. It's awesome that you noticed that. I really like that question. It's kind of fun to see if people see the principle. But okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Oh, argument flaw. Okay. Um, I'd say it's flawed because it is talking about the source of the author and not the argument itself.
Yeah, and kind of in a way. For this is one of the few ones where if we wanted to, we could diagram it realistically.
Okay.
I wouldn't, and I wouldn't say you should, but like in
Yeah.
practice, it's never a bad idea. Like when blind reviewing to test it out, we would have
Yeah.
inflammatory sufficient for inappropriate. And then the author doesn't go on to dispute the claim. And then we have a mistaken negation claim. It says the speech is not inappropriate because it's not inflammatory. We're saying,
Which is therefore.
is what we end up concluding. Therefore, unless there are
Right.
independent reasons to deem the speech inflammatory, it is not true that her speech was inappropriate. Whenever you see anything
Okay.
that could be conditional logic in a flaw question, I guarantee you, almost, there's like two exceptions to this rule. Almost always, it will be either an incorrect negation or an incorrect reversal. So you can immediately knock out any answer that isn't referring to one of those just based off of likelihood. And then in the very unlikely scenario that you've come across one, well, then you'll very quickly see that none of the answer choices you have left are an incorrect negation or incorrect reversal. So, does it make sense how we got this flaw out from this argument?
Yes. I
Awesome.
feel like I saw the comment about the feud and I was like, oh yeah, but this makes sense.
And that's a good point to note. Yes, there's so many flaw questions that base itself just off of
Yeah.
the person. But what do you think about A here?
Oh, okay. Now I got to think about this conditional logic. Okay. Um, takes for granted that the speech could not be inappropriate if it was not inflammatory. I don't know that it's taking that for granted. Wait, maybe
Why
it
are they
is.
reasoning that it can't be
Takes
inappropriate?
it's taking for granted that the speech could not be inappropriate. Okay, so not inappropriate if it was not inflammatory. Isn't that what it's saying?
What do you think? Is
I
it
feel like
is it giving reasoning? It takes for granted we're just saying that they're making the assumption of this. Is that what they're doing here?
assuming that the speech, oh, I guess yes.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
providing no reasoning for it. An important note for takes for granted. There's kind of caveats to it. Takes for granted, first of all, is only ever going to be the right answer if the fact that they're taking that for granted is important to the argument. If you can say that it's false, like if it's takes for granted that the professor's name is Riley, well, here, yeah, the professor's name is Riley, but we couldn't care less if the professor's name was
Yeah.
Riley or not. So a lot of wrong answers choices there will just base itself on it's not relevant to the argument. And then, yeah, that's the main thing there. This is important to the argument. If this isn't true that the speech could not be inappropriate if it is not inflammatory, that changes our argument. So then we get down to that.
Okay,
Next,
got it.
these we have like 10 minutes left, so we'll skip the boring ones. In a
Okay.
regular session, if we were doing normal tutoring, we would go through all of them.
Okay.
But in the interest of time, what do you think about B?
Fails to adequately address the possibility may be appropriate for some audiences. I feel like just on like hunch, the some audiences, like it's not really talking about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Some audiences is definitely a red flag here. No one, we don't really care for that. Fails to address adequately the possibility that, similarly to takes for granted, that's only ever going to be an issue if this possibility matters to the argument. If the
Gotcha.
fact that inflammatory speeches may be appropriate for some audiences actually hurt the argument, well, then that's a good answer choice there. However, it doesn't, so we can move on from it. Okay. Next up, we'll do one more flaw question.
Great. Most follow up bridge on their Okay.
Okay. Do you see any flaw here?
Um, they're saying that just because crying releases that hormone, that it would have the effect of reducing emotional stress, but they don't really create that link
Hmm.
besides that it's just that same hormone is being released.
Yeah, they're making a causation correlation error here.
Yeah.
This is one of the most interesting kinds of errors because it bears heavily on strength and weakening questions as well. Whenever you have a correlation causation error, there's four possibilities. A causes B, B causes A, and then we'll get into what these actually mean in a second, but both caused by C. Coincidence. So on strengthen questions, our goal is to strengthen the argument. On weaken questions, our goal is to weaken the argument. On flaw questions, our point is to point out what's wrong with the argument. So whenever any of those questions makes a correlation causation error, start thinking of these. If we think of the like statistic that's often thrown around of like ice cream sales and shark attacks peak at the same time,
Yeah.
or one cause the other. Well, from that, that's obviously not true. It's both just caused by summer. So that's both
Yeah.
caused by C. Ice cream sales
Yeah.
cause shark attacks, so on and so forth. For strengthen questions, your goal is usually going to be knocking out the other possibilities. If they're saying A causes B, then you're either going to be making it more likely that A causes B, saying we have more evidence that yes, A causes B, or you're going to knock out between one and three of the other options. Weaken questions, you're doing the opposite. You're either making yours less likely or the other three more likely. Flaw questions, you're either simply going to point out that these are possible or say specifically, what about this scenario?
Okay.
All right. So, what do you think about A?
I feel like that is yeah,
Sorry?
talking about the idea. Oh, wait. Reason is most vulnerable to criticism. Yes, I think that it could arise of something other than shedding tears. I would like to look at the other answers, though.
That's fair enough. Is there anything you can think of that's wrong with A?
Overlooks the if crying has a tendency to reduce, this tendency might arise because of something. But maybe, yeah, maybe it's not like this. That's necessarily what it's overlooking. The issue is that it's just giving too much weight to that causal relationship.
Did the argument prove that crying does reduce emotional stress?
No.
No. So we're at A, we can knock out because it's introducing a hypothetical that the argument doesn't care about. It cares about it maybe, but it hasn't proved it.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
then as a result, we don't actually know if, yeah, this is a possibility, but we don't know if it's true. Yeah.
Okay.
What about
It
B?
is required for the production of a given the condition that in itself would be sufficient to cause the production. I don't think so. I don't think that the issue is the sufficient necessary
Do we
problem.
really even have much like conditional logic in this?
No.
Not that we can see. No. What about C?
Even if one phenomenon causally contributes to this. Yeah.
Okay, why?
Or like it's trying to um mm, even if one causally contributes to I thought maybe it's not talking about the direction between
Yeah,
them.
does the argument seem to care about the other way, that the second phenomenon might influence the first, or was the argument actually?
Right. It cares about how that one phenomenon might have an
Hmm.
effect on something else.
Yeah, and we already know what the flaw is here. We're
Yeah.
saying one of those correlation causations. And this
Yeah.
might relate to like a B causes A. However, that's not what we're looking for here. It's a valid point in general, definitely, but it doesn't apply to this argument because there's no two-way influence that we know of.
Yeah.
What about D?
That's Alex. Yes. Uh,
What are you thinking for it?
um, it's recent found that human tears contain the same things. So I don't think it's talking about two distinct factors.
Isn't it? What factors could we be talking?
Studies have found that the same hormones,
And is everything distinguished? Is there any kind of blurring of any lines that you see here?
not necessarily, or studies have found that human tears contain many of the same hormones that the human body produces in terms. I don't really know how they're producing these hormones in times of emotional stress, but I don't know if that's really. Hence, shedding tears removes significant quantities of these hormones from the body. Crying must have the effect.
For this here, we would be looking for, first of all, two distinct factors that we can like nail down. However,
Yeah,
it would be, this is an error that does come up as a flaw in other answer choices or other questions, but we would be
yeah,
looking for like an incorrect separation of two. Possibly one
yeah.
thing is just one thing and they're separating it, or they're two things and they're failing to separate it.
Got
So
it.
then we get down to process of elimination again, but E, why is this the right answer?
Um, takes for granted because it's saying that because those tears have the same hormones, then that would be the effect,
Yeah, this
which
argument
is
is
not necessarily
assuming
true.
hormones cause stress because the body produces them when we are stressed. But it could just be a byproduct. Removing them might not have any effect.
Yeah.
So we'll do one more question. I think we have time for
Okay.
it, hopefully, or maybe two. But do you know when you're taking your test out of curiosity? Is June?
June.
All right.
I haven't registered yet, but hopefully the Thursday or Friday, I think.
Mine was on a Friday. I feel like it's a good day to take
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I could say for that specifically, if I suppose can provide advice on the actual test as well, across the board, the students who did literally nothing the day before did way better on the test, like to the point where it
Interesting.
cannot just be like a, or I guess that's a logical error that there's no proof that it helped. But
Yeah.
statistically, all of the students who have been able to do nothing the day before the test did significantly better. Me personally, I sat on a hammock and ate pizza the day prior. Worked out very well. Most of my students essentially just relaxed, did nothing the day prior, even the couple
Oh,
days
like
leading up to it.
don't go to work or something
I took the
to
day
like
off prior.
relax.
I like
Okay,
that's
interesting.
not feasible for everybody, and that's
Yeah.
definitely like a reasonable thing. If it's at all possible, I cannot recommend it more. The whole aspect of mental fatigue is very like odd to consider because we don't often feel mentally fatigued even if you've gone to
Yeah.
something the day prior. However,
Yeah.
in testing for myself, doing work one day and then taking practice tests, the actual test, and the same for students, the biggest differences come when doing literally nothing the day before, trying not to
Okay.
think about the LSAT before, and then secondarily, having a like perfect routine for it. Like know what kind of
Okay.
breakfast you're going to have the day of. If you're doing practice tests, if at all possible, if you're doing in person, which I do recommend in person,
Yeah.
yeah, try to like when you're doing practice tests leading up to it, try to simulate exactly what's going to happen as much as possible. So many horror stories of people showing up to their exam when they've only done practice tests like in their room kind of thing and
Yeah.
getting completely messed up by it. If you can go to like a library or something near your testing,
Yeah.
everything like that, the closer you can simulate the test, the better you'll do on the test.
Got it.
And if you have any like questions in the coming months, even if you don't end up continuing with this company, I'm around. I like talking about the LSAT. Send me an email. But
Okay.
anyways, we'll do this one more question and then we'll finish up here.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Which one, if true, most strengthens the climate? Great. Okay.
Okay, so first things first, the overall like formula for strength and weaken questions is always going to be same. Read it, understand the conclusion, find what's wrong with it. Most questions
Okay.
will have something wrong with them, a gap, an assumption, a flaw, something off with them. This, however, this is a pretty good argument. Is there anything that's weak in it, though?
Um, so it's saying that because winter temperatures will be higher, so there'll be more rain instead of snow. So I feel like the jump to then the mountain snowpack will melt more rapidly and earlier in the season is like, I don't know if that's maybe the strongest link ever, but it kind of is. Um,
That's fair enough.
yeah,
And then that's an important extra concept to introduce here. The LSAT, especially at the higher levels, it's like important for like occasionally this comes up, is the concept of relevant authority. Typically, I would fully agree with you that that is a weak link that like they haven't proved that. However,
yeah,
the LSAT allows us relevant authority arguments where this is coming from a climatologist. So then we're allowed
okay.
to believe that the climatologist does in fact know what they're talking about. If this was a weaken question, then you might be able to find a correct weakening answer choice that says something to the effect of, well, the climatologist hasn't proved their credentials. What if they're wrong? They haven't proved this link. However, here, the only real thing that we can find from this argument to make it stronger is the fact that it's probabilistic. The argument is that it'll probably happen. So how do we make an argument that will probably happen stronger? Well, we add some kind of
Hmm,
evidence. We either say this is
gotcha.
definitely going to happen, or we provide some instances of similar scenarios. So if you can't find a flaw, you can't find a gap, you can't find an assumption, check if the argument is actually going to happen. Try to.
Okay.
So, what do you think about A? We'll start with this.
Another probably. Um, yeah, I feel like that maybe doesn't strengthen it because,
Mhm. Why not?
or well, just because of what you just said, it's like they're both probabilistic. Um, unless I also don't know that that necessarily strengthens the argument that it'll melt more rapidly, just that
Yeah,
there will be more
exactly.
precipitation.
That's the main thing there. The argument is
Yeah.
probabilistic specifically to if this precipitation will actually make it melt more rapidly.
Yeah.
Adding more precipitation doesn't make that probably stronger as far as we know. What about B?
And other mountainous regions after relative. I feel like this could be good in that it's giving evidence of places where there are higher temperatures.
Yeah. And is this situation relatively analogous to the stimulus?
Yeah, other mountainous regions.
Exactly. This situation matches it very closely and it adds some extra backing evidence. So it seems pretty good. And then in the interest of time, we're going to knock out that one. What's wrong with C?
On average, in areas of the Rocky which winters I feel like there's less in areas of which winters are relatively there's less storable water than there is in areas that experience. My thought here is that maybe it's talking about two different areas in the Rocky Mountains rather than but they're going to be
Yeah.
increasing as a whole.
And that's a good thought there. The argument is talking about the entire Rocky Mountain region and the effect global warming
Hmm.
would have. This answer, this is a specific mild region in the Rockies. It doesn't tell us what effect global warming will do. These mild regions have probably had a long time to adapt to this. Global warming is a relatively rapid thing.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
about E finally?
The larger mountains, the greater the amount of